we shoot down a $4,500 drone, that's money well spent to me.
Right.
I mean, it's going to go somewhere, whether it goes, to Ukraine or Israel. I mean, that money's going to get spent somewhere.
You're right.
So we might as well keep loading those bad boys up, right?
Yeah. And I think one of the other things from the naval perspective is this is really one of the first times in history where our ships have been so close to the front line in a defensive measure in decades. We've had the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. There were threats to the ships, but not to the level that we're shooting down missiles now. In some engagements, they may shoot down 5, 10, 15 missiles in the course of one battle.
Right.
That's unheard of. Those are completely new things. Clearly, the U.S. Navy was prepared for it through technology and build out over the last 20, 30 years. But it's also a milestone, I think. And also one of the types of missiles that they're firing are ballistic missiles. And essentially all a ballistic missile is something that's going very high and then comes straight back down. And most missiles up until now that were threats to ships were sea skimming, or, they may fly 50 feet off the water, 200-300 feet off the water. But we didn't have these things flying massive elevations and then dropping straight down. And fortunately, our systems have evolved in preparation for that. But the first anti-ship missile shot occurred during this time. Like, it just happened.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's okay. See, learning new stuff already. So, excuse me. So now we got the missile systems in place. We have the Navy in place, and kind of talking about that. Now let's talk about a little bit of what's going on with the actual commerce ships, or the containers and everything, because I know it's kind of twofold, right? So now we have, actually maybe even threefold. So we got a bit of a bottleneck of ships who are, as far as what I've read, has been debating going through there, waiting to go through there, or turning around. And I forget how much longer these ships take to go around to get to where they're going.
Well, I have some cheat sheets, so I actually made some notes. So, and that's an important key. To take a step back before we go there, though, you have to understand that both the Panama Canal in the Americas and the Suez Canal are the amount of trade that goes through them is probably 80 to 90% of freight.
Yeah.
International,
global freight.
That goes by ocean.
Right.
And so literally right now at this, and in general, one issue is okay because there's other ways around it. But right now, when your two biggest choke points are having major problems, that's what's causing a real concern here. And in particular, the Suez Canal, you come up through into the Red Sea. The Suez Canal is your shortcut to the Mediterranean.
Right.
And so that's the primary freight route for goods from China and East Asia to get to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily the route just to America. In fact, the delay of American freight is far less. But if you're going from China to Rotterdam, which is a major freight port in Europe, it's an additional 10 days from China,
right.
But it's 30%. And I think looking at it from the percentage side is, that's fuel, that's labor costs, the people on the ship. But more importantly, beyond that, it's how many routes a year can that ship run? So if that ship can do 5 full round trips a year in a normal year, it may be able to do 4. After you cut down 5 ships, you're going to need another ship to pick up that same capacity.
Right, yeah. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're not seeing the increase in the shipping market. And I think maybe tagging on to that is a bit of like a video you sent me like 2-3 weeks ago or whatever on hazard pay for the crews. And so it kind of, to me, it also sounds like maybe the crews are like, no, I don't want to go on that boat to go over there because we're not, And I think whether that's right or wrong, it still would play a part on the functionality of that ship
True.
and where it can go, right? So if you don't have the full crew, that could be also trickling down a whole different avenue, but
Yeah.
Still would definitely play a part or a role in slowing things down. Because you just said 10 days, and that's exactly what I got up to, 10 days, and it could affect to increase everything by 15%.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one that really stuck out to me is Genoa. So if you're going from if you're going from China and you're trying to get into the Mediterranean right at the other end of the Suez Canal, essentially, now you have to go completely around and into the Mediterranean from the Straits of Gibraltar. And it's a 15 days additional, but the bigger part is it's 57% longer.
Right. So fuel costs now. So that also increases everything on that ship again, fuel, food, crews being out longer. So that creates a higher cost of operation for that boat.
Yep.
Which gets passed to the consumer.
Yeah, and think how long it takes for that boat to get back to China to
Right.
fill up again, though. That's the other problem. Fortunately, I think that's where some of the numbers are going to level out a little bit, is the amount of ships under construction worldwide right now are huge. So there's going to be a lot of ships coming online in 2024 and 2025.
Good.
And that's a reaction to the COVID freight issue. But fortunately, I think it's going to help this not being as bad as it could have been.
So if you don't know, I'm just going to touch on this really, really quick. So we had this COVID freight bubble. So I can speak for the United States, and I think it was very similar globally. But what we had is a bunch of ships that were basically just told to stop offshore, and they were out there for a very long time. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. And excuse me, I know for like the port of Los Angeles, they were out there. I mean, we had ships out there for I think 90 to 120 days before they were able to come on. But what happened is we had this almost like a freight crash, if you will. I don't know if that's a correct term, but that's what I'm going to use. So we had like this massive flow of just freight that was going, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. It was like the numbers, I mean, especially for me in logistics and trucking, like we saw that pretty quick. But then very quickly after that, it was like everything got released at one time. So we had this massive wave of freight that was coming in, and then everybody was needing their freight. Especially when that happened, it was right at the very infant stages of the Christmas rush. So it was like everybody's orders were just going crazy, and then the rates skyrocketed. Like we were seeing 100% increase on rates going from LA to the East Coast, and we were seeing like traditional rates going from LA to the East Coast, whatever those would be, say they're $5,000-6,000. We were seeing $5,000-6,000 to the Pacific Northwest. We were seeing $5,000-6,000 to Texas. We were seeing, 12, 13, 14,000 from LA going to the East Coast. Right. So we had this massive just boom. And then now things have really leveled out. And now in my industry it's not good right now.
Yeah, that's why I think this is so scary, is because it's I think we were just getting back to probably a new normal.
Yeah.
And then I think this is just starting.
I do too.
And to kind of talk about the Houthis and where they started out with what they were doing, they were essentially showing support for Hamas. And so originally they were just shooting ships that they had a port call in a month or two in Israel, or they were Israeli owned. But that quickly escalated, and now they're shooting pretty much indiscriminately.